There isn't anybody who cares more about long-term sustainability than actual farmers, because a lot of those people, well, not only do they want to farm for decades, which is a much longer time span horizon than most politicians and most people, but a lot of them would like to be able to have their children do the same thing. And they don't want to degrade the topsoil, and they don't want to pollute the water, and so, but they want to produce as much food as they possibly can. And
God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer.
I have a responsibility to do good, speak up and call it exactly how I see it. I just couldn't hear anyone else saying what we were saying at the pub or at home.
Our land is tough, and so are our people.
Yeah, because we stand up for your property rights. The overreach of government and their corporations. Look at the way policy is developed. Australia is at war with its own industries.
How can policy designed to protect the environment on one hand permanently destroy much-loved Australian landscapes and native flora and fauna on the other hand? Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "Farming looks mighty easy when your plough is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles away from the cornfield." Do you think it's time our elected representatives put down their pencils and take a walk beside Australian farmers?
I'm urging the organisers of local opposition groups across the state to closely coordinate to oppose the entire monstrosity. Yes, keep up the pressure in your own region, but we need a better organised statewide campaign that basically says not in our backyard, not in anyone's backyard. And
they're gutting our communities, and it's a death of 1,000 cuts to every single country town in this nation, and it is happening. I'm seeing it with my own eyes. We think that the 5 pillars that are holding Australia up, that keep our nation the way it is, are our productive farmlands, our rural landscapes, our wildlife habitats, our Australian way of life. But the one that I love the most is our strong communities. Those are the things that keep this country where it is right now.
It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners. Somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk. Somebody who'd bale a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing.
Let's get our hands back on the wheel and take Australia where we, Australians, want it to go.
Good morning. Welcome to episode 2 of Rural Resolutions. My name is Sally Edwards. Thanks for joining us this morning. A quick reminder, I'm not yet a seasoned live streamer and I'm still learning the ropes. So the L plates are still on, and these first few episodes I really appreciate your understanding as I get a handle on this software. Rural Resolutions came about as we realised there was a need for focused discussions about what challenges rural Australia, inviting strong local voices to discuss what is really happening on the ground in their community and potential solutions that seek to protect our land, our water, our people and their communities. If you were tuned in live this morning, we would really love to hear your questions. Type your questions in the chat and we will try and answer those as best we can. Today, I'm excited to welcome Eliza Jackson to Rural Resolutions. I first come across Eliza on social media and we seem to be singing from the same song sheet. Eliza is a lifelong Goondiwindi local, business owner, mother and community advocate dedicated to strengthening the future of her region. Alongside her husband, she owns Think Quality Building, giving her a first-hand experience of the opportunities and challenges facing local businesses, families, and the building industry. Over recent years, Eliza has become known for bringing people together to tackle the important issues. Her advocacy has focused on improving transparency and accountability in local government, supporting better planning and infrastructure, addressing crime and community safety, and ensuring fair consultation on renewable energy developments. representing community concerns surrounding the 𝗥𝗶𝘀 land transfer and helping achieve reform of the Goondiwindi Liquor Accord. Eliza believes communities thrive when people are listened to, informed, and genuinely involved in decision-making. She's committed to practical leadership, respectful conversations, and ensuring that local voices help shape the future of her town. Rightio, let's bring Eliza on.
Good morning.
Welcome, Eliza.
Hi, Sally.
Thanks for joining me today for Rural Resolutions Episode 2. I look forward to talking to you about your journey and getting to know you a little bit.
Thanks for having me, Sally, and for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to, hear people with similar concerns about what's happening to our rural towns. And I think with these shared conversations, we can really throw around some ideas about how we help protect our community and move it forward. As I did with Emma in episode 1, I would like to quickly start with something that we both hold close to our heart, and it's not often shared with the public, and that's some transparency.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a few questions for you. In recent years and now, do you wear any formal community hats or hold any volunteer positions?
Yes, I do hold a volunteer position, which is the Grants and Sponsorship Coordinator of the Goondiwindi and District Cricket Association. So that, if I can just elaborate on that, that's been an interesting journey over the past few years, because I've been having conversations with a friend, obviously with the grants role. I've written a lot of grants and worked on investment in our region, and she's been saying it's, I think a lot of people think it's government money, but when you frame it as it's actually our money, it's been a bit of a mind shift I've had to have, and think a little bit more about investment in our region. And from that, I think there's good investment which creates more economic value and improves productivity and living standards over time. But then there can be also poor investment which can cost taxpayers more money and add to debt and inflation. So that's been something I've had to have a good think about in that role.
Absolutely. It's a careful balance, isn't it, between, accepting grant funding for expenditure that is somewhat inflated, because often contractors and suppliers see, oh, that's a government grant, let's add some extra cream on this one. But it's also about locally educating our businesses and our suppliers that, we need to make the most of this money and get more bang for our buck, and we actually need to work together, and there needs to be a balance between what is utilised as government funding and how it's spent, and make sure that it's spent responsibly.
Yeah. A couple of questions I ask is, would this project have happened anyway, and does a benefit to the broader community justify the taxpayer dollars? So they're a couple of good questions, I think, for all organisations.
Yeah, that's definitely a good consideration. Are you an active member of any political party at the moment, Eliza, or ever have been?
I'm not, and I haven't ever been. I did attend CPAC conference in Brisbane last year, which I met members from mainly LNP, Libertarians and One Nation, primarily, were the people I met there. If I can just let you know about our region, we've got our Mayor, Lawrence Springborg, who is the immediate past president of the Queensland LNP from 21 to 25. We've got a Deputy Mayor who is the member of the Queensland LNP Executive and Chairman of the Southwest Region, and at least one other councillor here in town as part of the LNP Goondiwindi branch. We've also got State Member James Lister, who is our LNP representative, and Federal Member for Maranoa, David Littleproud. So I've really taken the time to learn about politics over the past 2 years, I think. But with sharing my ambitions of wanting to get into local government, I think I can best serve my community if I remain independent of political parties. So that's been my decision at the moment, and just learn as much as I can about it, just, so we can understand the policies that are being developed and take a step back and have a look at that.
Yeah. That's a interesting, thought process from you to start with. And I think one of the questions that we often fail to ask ourselves when we're looking at any of these issues on the ground is actually establishing the political interests of those involved, and especially the decision makers and the policy makers, and making sure that we understand what their intentions or motivations are. And often there's nothing wrong with those intentions, but it's just making them clear so that people understand, why they're making the decisions they're making at the time they're making them. I will come back to that. I will come back to that a bit more about local government councillors. But I'll just finish off these few questions first. How would you best describe your single motivating force to be publicly involved in rural advocacy?
I think the force came from being involved in the Cricket Association and developing a women's competition here in town with some friends, and just seeing that evolve over the time and grow. So we started with no committee in the women's space, and we went from 30 participants to 65 in a couple of years with a committee of 10 people. So I led that committee for some time, and although it's a competitive sport, at the end of the day, we have each other's backs, and that's across the whole competition. So I think that's been my driving force, seeing how things like that can bring people together, but then also, on the other hand, experiencing and witnessing policies that are actually doing the opposite. So it's very hard to be up against that when they're causing the division that they are. But I think we all need to get involved and actually, make change.
Sporting groups are an interesting thing to consider, because often some of the most passionate change that we see come from within a local community come from interest groups, come from sporting groups and, activities that people hold dear. So it's a great connector there with what policy influences our life and raising awareness within our communities. Okay. Now that we've got that out of the way, I want to take you back to the beginning. I've got a bit of an echo in my audio. I hope it's okay for you. But I would love for you to start with your childhood, where you grew up, who your biggest influences were, what your interests were, and how you got to be in Goondiwindi at this point in time.
Thanks, Sally. I grew up in Goondiwindi, so I was born here. I went to state school here and then on to high school. After that, I worked in pharmacy before I moved to Brisbane for 3 years. So in Brisbane, I worked in pharmacy as well. Involved in lots of policies, I suppose, making chemotherapy. So there was a lot of good manufacturing procedures and things like that I had to learn about. Met my husband, Scott, 2 years in, and he was living back here in town, actually, and that was at an Australia Day cricket game. So we did long distance for 12 months, and then I decided to move back home, which was really nice. Had my family here and now have 2 children aged 7 and 6, and they're now going to the state school, which is where I went. So that's lovely to see.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, so I wanted to go back to councillors and political parties. How do you feel your community view political party affiliation during a local government election? Is it something that is accepted and known, or where are people at with party affiliation during council elections?
I think it was pretty difficult because we had the 2-year land transfer, which I can speak about, but it was sort of unfolding at the time of the local and state election in 2024. So I feel that party affiliation did have possibly an impact on, how decisions were made around that transfer. I think we just need to remind ourselves that local government principles are in Section 4 of the Local Government Act, and they are transparent and effective processes and decision-making in the public interest, and sustainable development and management of assets and infrastructure and delivery of effective services, democratic representation, social inclusion and meaningful community engagement, good governance of and by local government, and ethical and legal behaviour of councillors, local government employees and councillor advisors. So I think, Sally, the policies that are coming in are very challenging for local governments to deal with. And, their resources are stretched. So, yeah, I think that those principles should be at the forefront. And I think if they are, it really shouldn't matter which political party is in at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's it's finding the ways to actually be confident that you can have these discussions with your community and you're able to under the Act, because there's a lot of confidentiality coming into this where I think that's interpreted very differently across different local governments, and it's reducing transparency in some of those conversations.
It certainly is. I found with the last local government election that party affiliation was more exposed than what it had been in previous elections. Mm-hmm. And if someone is affiliated, I would rather it be shown and transparent so people know when they're voting. I think trouble lies when people are politically affiliated but then don't disclose that and run as an independent. Mm-hmm. And I think that, that's not really starting, in my mind, not really starting off on the right foot for voters. And a lot of community members are actually not engaged in politics, so they don't understand the layout of why people do what they do from their political motivations. And they are looking for people who will make the best interests for their own community and make those decisions. What is your focus at the moment? What is your main drive with your local community, your local area? What are the biggest issues that you're currently investing time and energy into?
Yeah, I think it's trying to navigate such complex legislation and actually find ways that we can best educate our community around that so they are very well informed, and just having a look at decisions that are being made, with the renewable energy, for instance. The government say that they're committed to giving every Queenslander a voice. So I'm actually just trying to find out what that looks like in practice. From my interpretation of that roadmap, they've placed a lot of that in the hands of the local government area. So asking questions around how are these social impact assessments and community benefit funds going to be managed so we can educate the community and just make sure people are aware of what impacts there could be. And I think sometimes the impacts aren't obvious at the time of making the decisions. So learning from other communities. I've been grateful to have some good conversations with Millmerran residents and Goondiwindi residents just to actually see how it's played out first before we get to that point. So, yeah.
So there's a bit of a difference in state legislation between New South Wales and Queensland. In New South Wales, we had these things called renewable energy zones that were drawn on a map, and brought to our attention after the fact, after it was legislated.
Yeah.
Do you have designated areas where they're imposing the large scale developments on, or is it market driven and free for all? Wherever these projects can get off the ground, that's where they're putting them. Is the state having a play in where they're located?
I think back when the Labor government was in state, there was talk of renewable energy zones in Queensland, but since the LNP changed the legislation back mid last year, I don't believe that there is now renewable energy zones. But our local council actually told me that there is a renewable energy zone, but I did question that and found out, and that's where I found out about it was a previous Labor government initiative, the renewable energy zone. So I don't believe there is, Sally, and people are starting to ask questions about if they buy land and they're not in a renewable energy zone, but they're still being impacted, how do they get away from it? Or how do they make sure that that land they're investing in isn't going to be devalued, or, their property's impacted? So no, I'm not sure where they're able to pop up.
Yeah, it's almost a lose-lose situation, isn't it? You do reses, and then you have communities that, like in New South Wales, didn't have a say and didn't know about becoming a part of the res, or you don't do reses. And we still have a lot of renewable energy projects going up outside of res boundaries in New South Wales, and that's creating a war between communities that are out of a res and communities in a res, and it's just lose-lose. Wherever we go, there are people and communities very unhappy. Tell me about your council's involvement. Are they involved from the get-go, or is it, these projects pop up on your state planning portal and then your community raises awareness? How on the ball is Goondiwindi Council?
Yeah, from the questions I've asked, it's in the hands of the proponents, which really concerns me, because they don't really have the knowledge of our regional areas and how they operate. So I find it hard that it's in their hands, the social impact assessment, because there's no minimum requirements for consultation. So I think there has been some meetings in the communities close to the projects. So we've got 𝗥𝗂𝗏 and Inglewood. I do actually think Goondiwindi will be impacted, because I think it's between two projects, there could be an extra 1,000 people in the region, and Goondiwindi is the closest, biggest hub for services. So I believe Goondiwindi will be impacted, but Goondiwindi is not part of any consultation that I'm aware of. And the council have said the focus of the community benefit agreement, which is influenced by the social impact assessment that happens by the proponent, that the negotiations will be to ensure that the communities directly impacted receive long-term benefits. Importantly, the CBA will be a public document once it has been signed. In the meantime, however, council is mindful that information passing between the parties during negotiations may be considered confidential. So
is that basically saying they won't consult until after it's signed? Is that what your interpretation is?
I think so, yes. So I'm trying to educate them about Whitsundays Regional Council, who have actually put out consultation on their social media to get the views of their community to actually develop a community benefit agreement policy. Because, these negotiations will have a long-term impact. The benefits can go towards roads, housing, health services, things like that. I'm dubious that I don't think we should have to host these projects to get that funding for those things, but that's where we're at the moment with society. So dealing with it as best we can.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, and I have a background in community development and in grant writing and seeking funding solutions for local projects, and I actually have a personal belief that policy has brought us to where we are today and taken away funding from essential services that rural people deserve, just like every citizen in our country. And that by eroding our essential services, they've led us to the point where communities will embrace these community benefit funds and essentially the project, because we've got towns without sewage, we've got towns with, crappy water supplies, we've got terrible telecommunications, hospital and education have always suffered. And so people are ready to bring in this money to save these towns, when in essence, if you go back in history, the policy and the deals done with, say, even the big banks to remove our banks out of towns, they've closed industries, they've taken the banks, and here we are today, and no wonder our communities are desperate for this money. And the question is it right or fair? Well, I don't think so, and it sounds like you see it very much the same way.
Yeah. I think it's just got the opportunity to create some big issues within these communities that, will be long-term impacts. And once the damage is done, it's really hard to come back together after that. So
absolutely. It even changes the way these communities function, because, where we used to work together to fundraise and drive local projects that had, local vision and local energy behind it, now these projects are going to be, well, will it fit the community benefit fund criteria, and so they're not going to be coming from a place of sound community development, in my experience.
Yeah, I'd much rather see communities working really transparently, and not just that area, but the whole area, just to make sure everyone's on the same page first before that happens.
Yeah. Our council, they have signed one, we call them a voluntary planning agreement, which is the same as your community benefit agreement.
Okay. Yep.
So our council has committed to one with a wind project, and the last voluntary planning agreement, the draft went up on public display and received community feedback. I value that process with council. I feel like we have a disconnect between our elected representatives and the senior management of our council, whereas the community will contribute their feedback through the formal process, which is through the council system, and then that feedback is analysed from an operational perspective from the staff who are paid to run council. When in essence, I think we have an information gap and a communication gap between community and our elected representatients. I don't know how we can fix this.
I find it, we're the same, but I find it, I'm just like, if they know all the information, like I can ring each proponent and ask questions and they freely share the information. So I'm finding out more from them than I am my local council. But if they've got all the information and they know that, why can't we just have a conversation about it? It just seems like they have a major role, but the community don't have a seat at that table.
No, and the elected representatives who end up making the final decision, they are receiving filtered information through recommendations of the council operations when they're not listening directly to community on the ground, or at least that's how I see it. And, they weren't elected by our council staff. They were elected by community members. Yes. And that's who they are essentially charged with representing. And I it would be beneficial for those conversations to happen before they're sitting in a council meeting deliberating the recommendation in front of them, which is to sign these voluntary planning agreements.
Yep.
They're such a powerful agreement. It's worth a lot of money. They go for a long time. It has the the opportunity to influence the community and the Shire and the region's character moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And these agreements are potentially some of the biggest financial windfalls our council have seen in decades, or maybe ever. So it's very, very important. With your councillors that are currently on Goondiwindi Council, how many of them value community discussion and conversation in regards to these bigger issues, Eliza?
Yeah, they're quite happy to catch up, which is good. So, so they are very willing to catch up and talk about it. I think the trouble is, and this is probably from the building side of things, every house application, new home development application we do, I feel like is a tribunal. And you need a legal team behind you to actually find out what you can and can't do. And I can't continue to take time out of my business to go and talk about every individual project, because I know that there can be a better way through those processes. And so that's why I've just had to, I think, speak a bit more openly, have discussions with people about it to try and get the message across. It's too much, I think, for one person, so we need to do that collectively across the region.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest regulatory hurdles or policies that have taken your interest over the years to, feed this drive to connect community and council and to, flip the lid on transparency? Like, talk us through some of the ones that have really impacted either your business or your community.
I think through my business, so building a new home on a 2,000 hectare block for a client, and we were met with a vegetation management to clear a bit of grass. So it was no tree clearing. There was some grass. It was 450 square metres to put a new house on this 2,000 hectare block. And what happened was the local government planning rule that said you couldn't have more than 2 houses on that block, although it was 2,000 hectares. That then triggered a state referral agency trigger. So we went through a 6-month process of going through SARA. And we're a small family-owned business, and we just weren't getting correct answers that we needed at the time. I had the expectation that if they know the best way we can build this house on this land, that they'd just come out and let us know. But it just seemed like they didn't know themselves, and I think that's because the legislation is so complicated. And when you've got all these layers adding on top of it, triggering, this and that, it was very frustrating because I'd worked in my business to try and make things so efficient and streamlined, and then to have this outside, having to deal with that, and very time consuming. It probably added about $15,000 onto the cost of that build. And 6 months extra through those applications. I just realised then that, we just need to speak up, because my husband and I were getting a little frustrated with things. And, you have the conversations like, is it worth it and stuff like that. But I feel, we need to speak up for other family-owned businesses, because a lot of them are in our region. They're family-owned and they're trying to navigate these complex rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it, that over the years, governments have only grown, both state and federal, the level of bureaucrats and the amount of money that they're spending in all of these departments has only grown but we have continually lost efficiency and common sense and the ability to make a difference. I can't think of the last government department I engaged with, either on the phone or by email, and how many different people do you get handed to before they can find someone who might remotely know how to help you? It's a scary thought, and it's certainly worth, in my view, considering that when you're voting. You know, are we voting for parties that keep big government and all of these bureaucrats in jobs, or are we voting for a party that will reduce the size of government, reduce the waste, the cost, reduce the regulation, so that people can actually do things, you know, by choice and not by government demand, and you know, change our future? It is really scary just how convoluted the whole process is.
Yeah, and at the time I thought it was only in construction at the time, you know, and then I was chatting to a friend, she's in ag, and she said her husband loves being a farmer, but he really struggles to do it now because he's just behind a computer dealing with all the complex, you know, regulations as well. So it's pretty sad to hear that, and I think that's when I realised every industry is in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I was in hospitality a few years back, and you know, government regulation. One thing, it was hard to tick all the boxes in the beginning, and then to actually keep up with what you had to stay on top of. It's just another job entirely, and farmers are probably, you know, the policy and legislation is changing weekly. It's changing monthly. There are items calling for feedback each week through council, through state parliament, and even federally with these vegetation management reforms.
I saw that, Sally. And the pink maps. Yeah.
And it's not. We're not doing it to make things easier or better or boost business and boost the economy, which in turn boosts jobs. We're doing it to make my life more difficult, and people are walking away. And, you know, that's part of the reason why we're sitting here today, so that we can continue these discussions and raise awareness, and hopefully we can make change in the long run.
There's another, sorry, just on that construction note. So we're on the border, Goondiwindi, on the border of New South Wales and Queensland. So a lot of our trades travel over to New South Wales to complete work. So we were building a new home in New South Wales, and to do that, because Queensland there's something called an automatic mutual recognition, which means you can trade or build a house in New South Wales with your Queensland licence, but you have to follow all the legislation in New South Wales. So Queensland doesn't participate in that. So to actually get our licence, we had to, and this wasn't just our construction company, it was the plumbers and things like that as well. They had to drive to Moree, which is an hour away, because they couldn't submit their paperwork through email. So they had to turn up into a, you know, department in Moree. So yeah, taking people away from their businesses on this bureaucratic stuff that, yeah, we need to get better at.
Yeah, I can't even begin to imagine how you keep across legislation from two states to try and keep your business competitive. That must be a whole nother can of worms.
Oh, it added delays because we had to wait for our license to come through. So, you know, the house is ready to build. We could go there and start building it, but we just had to wait for that license to come across, and we couldn't start until we got that. So, so that's why it's important, I think, to have these conversations. That's a pretty simple change, I think, that could be made. So we just need the right people to hear it and, you know, be willing to speak up and represent us.
What's the average turnaround time for a DA?
About 6 weeks for a simple one. It's just they're generally not simple for all of the red tape reasons. So the little issues that pop up that you don't expect.
So if you're planning your construction timeline, how much do you safely allow to get your DA through?
So probably three to 4 months, I think we would need, just in case those issues do pop up, because there's different reasons you need to go back and forth, and they take time.
Yeah.
I think too, trying to grow, you're not confident to grow your business in that because it's so uncertain with all the red tape. So, not great for the industry. Yeah.
The New South Wales Parliament had an inquiry into the second dwelling reform for rural properties across the state, and I think it's been spearheaded by the Upper House Libertarian member John Ruddock, but I think New South Wales shall see some positive reform in that space soon. So I look forward to sharing that announcement when it comes through. But
is that
that
a second dwelling is able to be placed on the lot? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, good.
Yep. So I'm not sure of the technicalities. I think it might even be, those zoned in rural areas, you can only have one dwelling on a 600 acre block. There's something about the 600 acres, but with this reform, you will be entitled to have two. So you can build one for your kids or for your mum and dad or for your staff member or whatever, and you won't have a battle. So it'll be great.
Oh, good. Yeah. I think we need to look at a lot of ways to encourage, the investment. Zoning is a big one for us as well, because if you're outside of the tight town circle, you cannot subdivide less than a certain area, and so that's discouraged, people from doing some subdivisions and providing solutions, I think, for people that are wanting to relocate to town and have, like a 1 acre or a 5 acre block. It's just, there's not much, you can't do it at the moment. So hopefully that will change.
No.
We've just had some planning scheme reviews, so might see some changes there.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Yeah. What any other issues on the top of your to-do list at the moment? Any other focuses?
Just started some conversations around crime. So our businesses here have been hit pretty hard. I think getting community members together to work on issues is the best thing that we can do. Just started having some conversations about that, and hopefully, there's some interest there to get the community together. I think we can solve our own problems, and there's nothing more powerful than having people come together and do that. And so that's probably my next focus, I think.
Tell me a bit more about the crime that's impacting Goondiwindi. Is it youth crime? Is it breaking enters into businesses or homes? Is it stolen vehicles? What's the main concern?
Started with stolen vehicles for quite a long time, and then now it's moving towards businesses. So some businesses' insurances were telling me are around $115,000 a year to ensure they're doing everything they can to beef things up and, make it harder to access. But unfortunately, it just creates more damage when that happens, when they do get back in. And some businesses have been hit 6 times in the last 6 months. So, we've got a youth justice officer here in town now who was appointed April last year. So I've been having a few conversations with him. We've also got a cross-border commissioner, 𝗥𝘂𝗿, who was appointed in January this year. Border region of councils, so they get together. I'd love to see some community members from 𝗥𝘂𝗿 and Goondiwindi working together on it. So, just putting the word out there at the moment and seeing what people what ideas people have.
Yeah. And the commissioner's role is that to, liaise with all of those stakeholders and those who are impacted and then take recommendations back to government?
I believe so, Sally. Yeah. He's a little unsure of how to tackle this one, but yeah, we'll see how we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The crime in rural communities, I think, is a concern that goes across the states. Two of the big issues here are bail conditions and repeat offenders, and also the rate of policing in small towns.
Yeah.
I can't speak for the bigger towns, but I know our small communities struggle with keeping one police officer in town all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Either those positions come and go, or those appointed to a town are actually called to the bigger centres to cover shifts in the bigger towns. I'm curious, what does it look like for you guys? Is that kind of the same, foundation for what is enabling this crime to grow?
Well, he did say that there was only 2 police officers on duty of a night, which I think we could probably do with more. But it is a very complex issue, and I think it's going to take a lot of different, areas to focus on, to bring together and work on it. So,
yeah,
things like
any positive,
yeah.
Any positive ideas from the community so far as to where to start?
Yeah, we did have. I was talking to a friend yesterday, actually. So she does a lot of early intervention, and she's happy to help out. So, so we're just trying to decide the best way forward. I think you just, it's a good idea to put it out there. And then I was thinking a community meeting. But there's been some really good ideas that have come up through conversations that we could try first, and then, making sure if we have a community meeting that we're all having constructive conversations and that it's not going to have a negative impact, I think. So conscious of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, we had a speaker come down from Queensland to take a tour of our renewable energy zone, and she was adamant that our roads were 10 times better than Queensland. And we've got our own road battles here. We've seen our councils forced to decrease the speed limit on our rural roads by the state. One would have to wonder what the real reason is. It seems like they don't want to spend money on our rural roads.
Mm-hmm.
But yours are apparently a whole lot worse. So tell us about your road situation and what the go is.
Our highways, which are federal highways, are really, really bad. Like, there's permanent signs up, rough conditions ahead, that don't move now because they're not fixed, or when they are fixed, they're patched, and it just, they fall apart again. So I recently did a community roads feedback survey, because once again, trying to get decision makers to actually have the community's ideas behind, the evidence, I suppose. How are we impacted? How's the community impacted? So that survey got 42 responses, which I thought was good. And I forwarded that on to our council just so they can advocate, I suppose. And looking into the funding as well. So what funding is coming in? I'm just waiting on some more information there. And then where is that funding being spent? But unfortunately in Queensland, I've just read up about reduced funding for disaster recovery. So once again, the funding's getting cut because the spending is so high and we just can't sustain it. So, having a look at different areas where we can improve that, I suppose.
Yeah. The funding models, I'm not familiar with Queensland at all, so I don't know if it's the same as New South Wales, but the funding models make it really hard for our council and our regions, and particularly for things like roads. But I just wondered what the main difference was when Katie come all the way down here and she commented on how good our roads were, and I think everybody was like mouth wide open because we didn't think our roads were that good.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. To be a land transfer, I do want to have Michael on and have a good chat to Michael about this. How did it become public knowledge to you? Like, when did you first learn about this, and how was it viewed by the community? Well, we were told, so we were briefed at the Meet the Candidates event that happened prior to the local election. There was a briefing done, and our community were told that there was going to be broad public consultation. The council then held a meeting out at 𝗥𝗂𝗏 the Kindy at 𝗥𝗏𝗏, and we're told once again that there would be broad public consultation. So I was watching it, I was learning about the legislation as best I could, and the Aboriginal Land Act actually doesn't allow for public consultation. So, the community were being told they were going to get that. So I thought, okay, the community have an opportunity to have the broad public consultation, and we were told that that would start on the 4th of March. So the state government actually came out on the 4th of March and did an information session that we were told was going to be broad public consultation. So then I asked questions with the state government after that and said, what was the outcome of the consultation that happened? And I was told by the state government that legislative steps were followed and no broad public consultation was required. So meanwhile, our community ended up very divided over that. It's created a lot of damage within our community, and I just wish the local government or the state government would come out and be honest with the community about what went wrong, because it's clear that we were told we were getting broad public consultation and that didn't happen. So it did end up in a few court cases, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, I think, there was state relied on the council to do the consultation, and the council relied on the state to do the consultation, and nobody actually ended up being consulted throughout it. Yeah.
When the information session that the state did run, was it like a drop-in session, or was it a public meeting?
It was a public meeting, and it was, they told me it was to explain the process of how the land transfer will occur.
And did many people attend?
I think there was, I didn't actually attend, Sally, so I did raise some concerns with a councillor, and he told me that they didn't want to be seen to be acting with prejudice. So unfortunately, I felt that the people that were most impacted, that lived in 𝗥𝗏𝗏 for a very long time, have their businesses there, I just felt that they should have a say, and they didn't get that.
Absolutely. They should have been the first ones consulted.
Yeah. And we were told that, the size of their town is doubling, but the size of their town couldn't double prior to that because of planning restraints. So maybe 𝗥𝗏𝗏 would have been bigger if planning restraints weren't there. So I don't think it's a good way to look at it, to say that we doubled the size of the town. Yeah.
We
did receive some legal advice after that, and it said that the Goondiwindi Regional Council's statement that it recognised the limitations on our input in this process as trustees is somewhat misconceived. Although it was a trustee of the reserve, it was nonetheless a local government with all the powers thereof under the Local Government Act And in that capacity, it was able to consult with its own community about the community's views on the proposed transfer. So I feel that they could have consulted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of angst and confusion and some disasters, they can all be avoided with open conversations. It's not about, you know, making sure that everybody's on the same page. It's about making sure that everybody feels heard and everybody has a genuine understanding of what, you know, whatever is occurring.
Yeah, yep, that's right.
You mentioned before, and I would like to ask your thoughts on how we can do this. Minimum level of consultation. It's something that's always been a bugbear of mine. Council or a state proponent or anyone will have this requirement to consult. And so they hold a information session, but then only one person turns up.
Mm-hmm.
And that consultation is still marked as being completed when it can't possibly be, because, you know, speaking to one person is not consulting the community. What are your thoughts on how we achieve a minimum level of consultation, and who best to determine what is the minimum level consultation, because that changes for the scope of, you know, whether it's a development or an initiative, or like they're not all proportionate in importance.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think, Sally, that comes down to elected representatives. You know, I just feel that we should be able to have a conversation with them, and yeah, I think it's quite clear what is consultation and what isn't. And yeah, we have had information sessions in other areas, and I've questioned it. I'm saying, is this a consultation or is it not? Because a lot of the times it is just an information session, which comes after decisions are generally made. So I think we just, as a community, we ask those questions, and we need to be shown that process. And I think then it will be a little bit clearer around, you know, have the decisions been made yet? If they haven't, what is the consultation? And then showing people how that feedback actually determined the decision that was made.
That's a really good point about the timing of consultation being after the planning's done or before. In a lot of instances, it can save time and money to consult before, to avoid some of the, you know, challenges that will be brought up after planning is initially completed. But that is the process or the status quo at the moment, that projects or developments or initiatives are top-down planned, and then consultation is invited only on that plan as such, not on the objective, which would be more beneficial for locals to be heard and to have a say in the planning of their future, is to participate in the conversation about the objective at hand, not actually the project design as it's, you know, already 5 steps down the road.
I think I think allowing those opportunities, and you need to allow a couple of different opportunities for consultation, because people have different ways that they like to raise their concerns. It might be through a conversation, it might be through a survey, or I think the broad public consultations are good because you can hear other people's concerns, which then can help you, you know, decide on what you think might be the best way forward. So, yeah, but then just being able to show this was our decision and this is how we got there. And, yep, people, like, not everyone is going to agree, but we've made the best decision we can based on the views of the people that are living in these communities.
Yeah. And that's an important part too in recognising the value of enabling community decision making. So not just inviting consultation, but empowering communities to have decision making abilities on the very things that will affect their future.
And then, you know,
I don't know
if the state government aren't happy with that decision, so then we just don't do consultation and just go with the decision anyway. Like, it's just doesn't put us with the best outcomes at all across, you know, whatever you're speaking about, whatever influence it is or development it is. Yeah. I think the local council really need to be able to say to the state government, this is the best, you know, outcome for our community, and then hopefully they work together to make that happen.
Absolutely, and they should be able to refuse and not accept developments that are to the detriment of their region or their community. You know, that's why, you know, people like us advocate against central planning. You know, planning should be done at a local level, done by the people who, you know, live and care for that local area and are invested in the future, not done by faraway bureaucrats in Sydney and Melbourne and in some cases around the world, which is what's pushing the renewable transition.
Yeah, we want our kids. We want our kids to stay here in these communities, don't we? So, yeah, we need to make sure the decisions are in their best interests.
Yeah, and the only people that can ensure that are those that are on the ground and those who care right now, which is what you're doing.
Yeah,
which is wonderful. Do you find it hard to engage support, or is it something that people are you know, stepping out of their sporting groups or their businesses and you know, willing to lend a hand?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people, because I share quite a bit on Facebook just to get some information across. I've had a lot of people come up and say, you know, thanks for everything you're doing. We support you. So that's been really great to hear those comments. Yeah, it is tough. Like, you feel like you're criticising, whereas I don't see it like that. I see it as critical thinking. And if we lose the ability to think critically and be able to speak and verbalise that about decisions, well, you know, yeah, we've just got no hope. So it's tough, but yeah, the support's been good, Sally. And like I said, meeting people in other communities that are doing the same thing, that really helps as well. The challenges of they're similar, so I think we can all work together on those things.
Yeah, the stories of rural communities are so diverse, as in the background and the character and what makes them tick. But the underlying foundations and the connections and relationships between people and community groups, and, you know, all of the ways we interact, they're all so similar. And if only government would get out of the way and really let communities take the lead on some of this stuff.
Yep. I think it's interesting to see farmers fight back down in Victoria. It's it's been, you know, I feel for them. That compulsory acquisition must be terrible. So great to see them come together, and looks like they've got a lot of support for that, which is good.
Yeah. Now, speaking of compulsory acquisition, this is the first big red cross I've seen the Queensland LNP government do, but they are changing the compulsory acquisition laws to give them more power across more industries. I'm not across it. If it isn't on your radar yet, may I suggest that you take a look at that. I believe there are hearings happening this week about this legislation proposal. But it seems like it will be a huge detriment to landowners across Queensland, and to have compulsory acquisition powers widened and the scope broadened across Queensland. So, is that something that's come to your awareness yet?
Yes, I did have a friend actually speak about that. She had an interview on that, and yeah, I've been watching that, and yeah, hopefully people think long and hard about, you know, whether this is going to be a good idea or not. I don't think so, Sally.
No. I giving government more powers to take private land, I'm not sure that much good can come of that.
No.
I would much rather them work out, you know, what their priorities are, and then bring it to the table and actually work through with landowners about what their objectives they're trying to achieve and why. And, you know, if they're fair, rural Australians are fair-minded people, and they'll come to the table and go, yeah, well, that makes sense to me, and, you know, maybe we can look at it from this angle and do it this way.
Yeah.
I know landowners in our transmission corridor here, all they wanted was to have a say on the route, on the corridor. You know, when government proposes to run it right through the middle of your place, to have the discussion that is it possible to consider staying on the boundary and not just running off this map of a line that's created from a desk in Sydney. And that couldn't happen. And when you're talking about rewiring the nation and 10,000 kilometres worth of new transmission, if they don't do it better, they're going to continue to have these massive battles everywhere they go. And I don't think anyone's going to be winners from this. The government will lose with all these cost blowouts, which is taxpayer money, and then, you know, our communities and our landowners suffer along the way.
That's right. We have got the community cabinet coming out in August, so it might be something to chat to them about while they're here. So I'll do a bit more research on that and maybe have some discussions if it's not too late.
Yeah. So what is the community cabinet? Is that a state group or?
Yeah. So the Queensland government ministers come out. You can make an appointment. I think
okay.
Yeah, I think they're a 15-minute appointment you can make to chat to them about it. So got a few little points there that we can have some discussions about. And, you know, if they claim they want to give every Queenslander a voice, I think they just need to show us how that looks in practice. So yeah.
That sounds like a good opportunity. Politics, federal politics. What's on the news at the moment? I wanted just to ask you two questions. What do you love about what you're seeing, and what concerns you the most about where we're at today?
I love seeing just everyday, ordinary Australians who are working in businesses actually decide that they've had enough and it's time to speak up. I think that will put our country in a really good place, and that'll create a movement that we need. And what scares me is just the result of our next federal election, which I'm sure, you know, everyone's probably feeling the same. Well, everyone I've spoken to is feeling the same, Sally, so that's going to be a big one.
Yeah. We've just had our first question pop through. Thank you, David, for sending that through. How confident are we of one nation standing up for rural communities if they are to form government? Would you like to have a stab at that one first, Eliza?
You go first, Sally.
David, I believe the government needs a shake-up. We are decades down a road, and, you know, we've got to do a sharp U-turn. I don't call them the two major parties. I call them the uni party. They've both put policy on the table at state and federal level that have got us to where we are today. I didn't think when my kids were little that this would be where we were at, but it is. So some people call One Nation a wrecking ball. You know, I'm a libertarian and part of the Libertarian Party, and I really believe in small government and letting individuals chart their own journey. So One Nation seems to have a role to play. Am I confident in their actions when they form government? I think they are on a really steep learning curve, and they'll be, bringing in candidates and members that they don't have relationships with. Then this will be the part of growing so quickly that will probably give them pain points. But overall, I think the shake-up will be enough to get people actively involved on the ground, and can only be a good thing. That's how I see it at the moment. How about you, Eliza?
Yeah, look, I think we just need to look at the candidate, really. What are they standing up for? How willing are they to speak to you about the issues that you have? Are they, can you contact them easily? If so, are they prepared to speak for your views? But yeah, I think we really need to look at the actual candidate. And I've tried many times to get in touch with our federal member, and unfortunately I'm not getting much from that. So
yeah,
learning about the actual candidate and what they stand for would be my suggestion.
Yeah, what runs they have on the board, how willing they are to be involved on the ground with our communities. Do they listen? Do they participate in the discussions that and be the voice that we need them to be?
Mm-hmm.
Because those people, those candidates, and even the branch leaders and the executives, they all should be playing a role on the ground that people can see and recognize. And I think that's a great point, Eliza. Thank you, David, for asking that.
We've got a local in our region who is very willing, who's standing up for the next federal election, and she's out talking to people all the time. So I like that. I like that I can call her anytime and have a chat. So we need real change, and if we do the same things that we've been doing, we won't get that.
That's right. Independence. I value independence, and I think that we've had a lot of great independence, and they make a huge difference in our parliaments. One of the downsides of the independent movement I have found is that the Teal group, Climate 200, used the name Community Independent as their marketing for putting candidates forward. And I worry that real independence will be somewhat impacted by that. That might be something that impacts New South Wales more because of our Teal seats here and the expansion of Teal candidates. Is it something that you have seen in Queensland, Eliza?
Not really, Sally. Sorry, I can't. Yeah, I don't know enough about that in Queensland to comment. Sorry. So interesting.
No, that's fine, because I haven't seen any Teal candidates in the rural Queensland seats that I kind of follow either. So it might not be impacting you guys. I just know they use the title Community Independent down here, and then spend half their campaign justifying that they are an independent and not a Teal. And then when people dig into their finances, they can see that they're sponsored by Climate 200.
Yeah.
So it seems a bit of a farce, and that just that just cements our view on the value of transparency, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Just really, doing a bit of research, isn't it, on those things.
Yeah. And I would encourage voters before any election, local government, state, federal, to actually invest that time, instead of going for a colour on the day, actually invest the time in looking at the history of the candidate and where they've come from, and you know what their motivations are and what their aims are.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, if you haven't got
okay
that's frequently engaging with your community, you know, they can't represent your interests. So yeah, so you need to be able to see them and speak to them regularly, I think. Yeah. And you want to be able to. A lot of our representatives haven't had to do that for a long time, but I think they'll have to.
Yeah. And that's a good part about this whole transition too. The additional engagement of people on the ground, you know, politically at the last federal election, majority of the voters didn't even understand the voting system, and many probably still don't. But I think as each day and week goes by, the understanding of, you know, the upper house and the lower house and the role of both, you know, even if you don't have an upper house in Queensland, do you? No. So, you know, it's just understanding the level of government that you're engaging in, and asking the questions of those that do, so that you can, you know, build your knowledge. Was there anything else that you had on your list that you wanted to cover off today while we're chatting on council and transparency and accountability? Is there anything we haven't touched on?
I don't think so, Sally. I think that's covered most of it on my list. Thank you.
No, thank you for coming on, and thank you for being willing to share your experiences and a snippet of your story. I really wish you well, and I think Goondiwindi is lucky to have you, Eliza, fighting for them. And I hope that over time your community, the people who know of you, continues to grow, and that you get the chance to, you know, stand up for them in a way that is truly beneficial for the future of Goondiwindi. So good luck.
Thanks, Sally. Appreciate that. And
thank you, everyone.
Thank you for all the work you're doing as well.
You go.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. For those that have tuned in online, and David, for your insightful question, thank you. We will sign off now. And, yeah, thanks again, Eliza. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.